pulls you in and doesn't let go.
Okay, hello. Welcome back to the Carousel. First Carousel episode in like 2 weeks. Feels like it's been forever since I did one of these. Here today with very special guest, good friend and great all-around guy, Peter Gietl.
How's it going? Thanks for having me, Isaac.
And Peter, you are editor-in-chief of Frontier Magazine.
Yes, sir.
A beautiful culture magazine that, thick pages, glossy. This is the third episode of it. It's the third issue of it. Here's Elena Velez smiling here. And
then
yeah.
in the past has featured amazing writers like yourself.
Yeah, I've been featured in there twice. We have a lot of ads in here. So tell us about the genesis of this. Here's not a tranny, believe it or not, and from the Elena Velez show. Tell us about here. Okay, here's like a whole thing on Sabo, the street artist. There's always great stuff in here. So tell us, what is Frontier Magazine, and how did you come to control it?
Frontier Magazine, well, I mean, in some ways the genesis early on was maybe Frontier Magazine, which had a publication a few years back. That's where I started working with James Fullis and Matt Peterson.
Wait, you just said Frontier Magazine.
Sorry, Return.
Return Magazine.
Return.
Okay.
Yeah,
so,
and
yes,
then
Return Magazine.
Return got folded into Blaze as covering tech and stuff like that. But we really wanted to produce a high-end premium lifestyle magazine that focused on culture, Americana, resiliency, people building, people creating. And that was always kind of the vision with James and Matt and myself. Fortunately, Blaze was nice enough to kind of let us do whatever we wanted in that respect. But we really thought it needed to be kind of coffee table size, great photography, great illustrations, journalism, whiskey reviews, American-made products, just kind of that, kind of glory days of Vanity Fair and GQ and some of those great magazines that maybe aren't as great anymore. So hopefully aspiring to be at that level.
Of course. So remind me, what was Frontier, and then how did Frontier evolve into? Sorry.
Well, Return.
What was Return, and then how did Return evolve into Frontier?
So I originally started working for Return. I came on, I think, like their second issue, something like that. And, Return had a lot of like essays. A lot of it was kind of future tech, cyberpunk, realism, AI, a lot of interesting artists and writers and thinkers that were in there. But it was definitely a little bit more of a literary magazine, so to speak. It was heavy on the words. And when we came over to Blaze, we decided that it would be a great opportunity to launch a print magazine. So that's why Return kind of morphed into Frontier from there.
Okay, so, but what were you? He's saying we have great Hawaiian shirts on. He's right. But again, one does not simply walk into the world of big glossy magazines. I mean, this is something that everybody wants. This is thing that everybody dreams of. It's not two effing days that go by before there's yet another anti-woke based magazine that's launched in Los Angeles of some type that it inevitably lasts for 18 months and then disappears forever. So, what's different about Frontier? How is this? How does this come to be? I mean, because this takes an amazing amount of resources to build something like this. So, how did you get so lucky to be in charge of something like this?
Well, I guess we still have to make it to 18 months, Isaac. So we don't want to get too out of ourselves.
But this is different. This is a different thing.
My background is in. I came out of the print world. I've run like national print magazines before that are in Barnes and Noble, like glossy newsstand stuff. So that's always been my passion and joy. And like magazine writing is my favorite type of writing that exists. And I mean, I honestly thought that I might not be able to work in print again, that era of my life might have passed me by. But then, like I said, once we came over to Blaze and started working on it and started sketching the idea, I mean, it was a ton of legwork, a ton of thought into what we wanted it to look like, building on our experience. I mean, a lot of the credit has to go to Miguel Bruckenmeyer too, who's the designer, the creative director of it, and he's from New York and has a ton of experience with all kinds of a bunch of magazines that everyone would know, and a lot of his aesthetic ideas, and then him and I brainstorming, and then he was able to actualize it on the page. So, it was a lot of experience, and made by people that really have a passion for great journalism and great photography, and what a magazine can be, which is hopefully not something you just like thumb through and throw out, that it can sit on your coffee table. There's a lot of great articles, a lot of great stuff. I think that everything is so digital in this day and age that having something tactile in your hand really is beneficial. I think people enjoy that, being able to take a break from your phone and actually read something and thumb through it. And that visual storytelling too is such an important part of it, and you get that, I think, so much more in magazines than you do in any other format.
So you said you love magazine writing. It's your favorite form of writing. Why is that?
I think it exists in this really cool place where it's not a newspaper or like a news blog, but it's not a book, and it's somewhere in between. And ideally the best forms of it, you can pick it up, I mean, even 20, 30, 50 years later, and it's a really interesting snapshot of a moment in time, and it's still like somewhat evergreen and somewhat readable and somewhat interesting. And I think that that's kind of a rare type of writing that kind of brings in the book side of things with more news, and it's a wonderful amalgamation. I mean, when I was putting this together, I bought probably 100 magazines from 8 different decades, and was trying to read through and steal every like good idea that I could see or design thing. But from Playboy in the 60s to Vanity Fair in the 80s and Life in the 50s. But I think that it is kind of cool that you can pick up, a Vanity Fair from the 80s, and it's really a lot of those articles are even timely, or at least interesting. It's amazing how much Trump is in every magazine, it seems like, in the 80s, either lambasting him or praising him, which is kind of an interesting cultural footnote that I came across researching that. But yeah, that's part of where that passion comes from.
Yeah, I also love magazine writing. I'm my whole life I always am the guy who like loves newsstands. I'm one of those guys who just loves a newsstand. Anytime I see a newsstand, that's one of the things that in our modern world I really miss is walking up to the newsstand, one of the big newsstands. Amazingly, we have one in Pasadena that's still there right up the street, and it's like such a joy to walk up, or it used to be such a joy to walk up to the magazine and just like go, the rack and go through all the different magazines and see who's writing. And I also agree, my favorite writers through history are all like magazine-ish types of writers who can do the kind of gonzo unpacking of a real story. You know, I'm a
Hmm.
longtime New Yorker reader. I love the New Yorker.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah.
terrible now. It's very sad what's happened to it. But yeah, and you've really structured this like I think the brightest spot of this is besides the ads, of course, which I love. Here's a Galvanic ad in here, by the
They're
way.
they're quite good.
A message from the fine people at Galvanic. Good morning. We're going to win. Is in here, but you know beyond the ads, which I just love as an ad man, but you know you've got it laid out in this way where it's really about the culture of the right. You know, it's
Hmm.
really like any good magazine, you know, like Vanity Fair or whatever. You've got like a scene picks in the
Hmm.
beginning, you know, and I love that. I just love that because it's like that's I always remember opening up Vanity Fair and then you'd see 2 pages of pics from parties basically
Hmm.
that like cool people went to. Even the LA Weekly I think had that. You know, there
Yeah.
was always like a couple pages of party pics. And here, you know, Beck, Poulos and his wife. You know, it's just really
Yeah.
cool to like see these yeah, here we have Barry Weiss, our best friend, and yeah, so you know, it's just cool to have our scene, which is so you know, how often do people talk constantly about our scene? Come alive in this way, you know, to really come alive in the pages of a magazine. It's just so cool to see.
Yeah, and I mean, I absolutely shamelessly stole that from Vanity Fair, that idea of no, but I think it's like, I mean, I grew up in Denver. I don't know if it was the same for you, but you're kind of, you have literary tastes or culture aspirations, and wherever you are, you picked up Vanity Fair, and you can see like, oh, there's this scene happening. There's interesting people, thinkers, writers. And I thought that that was really important in this moment to kind of showcase that for the right.
Yeah,
That
right.
it's not just chamber of commerce parties or
Yeah.
boring CPAC dinners. That there's something happening all over the country, all over the world too. That's interesting. That's a scene. That's cool. And showing that off in the little way we can, I think, is really important.
Well, because you yourself are a little bit of a defector from the left, right?
Yes. I mean, a long time ago, but as as you're wont to do, you're kind of a leftist in college. That was kind of my journey, and it was interesting that in grad school I was in Switzerland, and that's where I really got introduced to a lot of the critical theory and reading all that, and I was like, well, I don't know what I am, but I'm definitely not whatever this is and whatever this is proposing. And so kind of there was my political and intellectual journey of turning much more right wing.
So how did that begin?
Um, probably a little bit Alex Jones. I remember that was kind
Oh,
of one of the,
really?
yeah, you
Wow, you
started
don't
reading a
hear
little,
that too
yeah,
often.
getting a little InfoWars.
Usually,
Um,
Jones is the end of the road, not the beginning of the road.
yeah, but I mean, just basically starting to read more, because when you're in that echo chamber of intellectual academic left, you really never come across any of the ideas and writers are really just verboten. And so it was kind of on my own, just kind of a journey of self-discovery of reading people, and then realizing, like, some of my favorite writers like Tom Wolfe, like, oh yeah, this guy actually wasn't a leftist. And you just kind of always assume, and some of those writers that you enjoy actually a lot kind of weren't the status quo left wing that we see now. But yeah, just read. I mean, I'm trying to think off the top of my head some of the writers that really influenced me on that path. But um Yeah, it was a journey, and then got really excited when Trump ran in 2015.
Oh, really? So you were Trump 20, you were all in already.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely.
So how did you
Uh,
come to that decision?
I think, I mean, like a lot of people, I was pretty disgusted with politics, disgusted with the status quo. I mean, I'm a person who is much more comfortable having a Negroni in Milan than having a beer in Iowa at the county fair. Um, However, my sentiments very much, I was always, even when I was left wing, it really kind of angered me of how much like outward hatred there was for the working class
Mm-hmm.
and blue collar Americans. It always like struck me as kind of disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then so when he came onto the scene and with that populist message, it really resonated with where my politics were heading and what I believed. And and also, I mean, just the way he spoke was so, at the famous, I think it was the second Republican debate, where he's saying that, I know all you guys are bought off because I paid all of
Right.
you.
Yeah, that
It's
was
like
great.
the idea someone could say that was really exciting. But it
Totally.
ended up, my Trump support ended up costing my job in national magazine. But
Okay, so tell us that. It's funny. It's funny how similar we are. It was the exact same with me, and I also
yeah.
lost my job at the time because of it. So what happened?
I was the executive editor of a national tech magazine that was in like every Barnes and Noble. We were partners with E3 and oh, I'm blanking on the Vegas show. I can't believe I'm blanking on. Anyway, the so I was kind of kept my politics to myself and kind of just nodded along, and then one time, like I think in 2017, I was drunk in Vegas and told my publisher that I had voted for Trump, which I thought like who cares? Like who cares? Like what?
Totally.
I didn't think that he would care about that, but I was fired a week later.
Oh my God! And what did he say?
Um, well, I mean, he said at the time that he's like, I just don't know if I could work with someone who believes like that, and then
Wow.
it's like, oh, we're just going to go in a different direction, and but
It's crazy how similar that was to my thing. It was almost identical.
right. And you
Yeah,
were at an
yeah,
ad agency, right? Is that
yeah. I was at an ad agency and like a dream job, and it was the same thing. It was yes. I got sort of wind of people saying, or a guy said to me like, "Yeah, that Trump supporter doesn't belong here." And then yeah, like 3 weeks later, it was, or 2 weeks later, even it was just like, "Oh yeah, sorry, we're laying you off," and I was the only one who got laid off. And I was like, "All right." I was so pissed at that time, but in the end of the day, it was a good thing. But it is amazing. I mean, it's definitely amazing how damaging. I mean, just how damaged white guys who just dared to like think for themselves were in this period. For a straight, I guess it hasn't been a decade, but yeah, basically a decade. If you were a white guy who didn't shut up
hmm
or totally toe the line of being a communist, essentially, you were targeted. I mean, you were basically screwed. You were not going to make it anywhere because you were just going to get totally outgrouped the second you did anything.
yeah.
And it's kind of unbelievable. I mean, it's sort of amazing that happened, and especially in America, it's like crazy that and that's going to be something that is looked back on always as this period of great shame, I think.
Was that hard for you to like work through, like when that happened, or did you have a lot of anger around it, or?
I'm a different case because I'm like, again, I'm so incapable of like working for other people that I was never gonna make it. It was never gonna
hmm
be work out for me in the mainstream anyway. I would have gotten a lot further and I would have been treated much better and I would have, yeah, I would have had a much more kind of nicely contentious relationship with the mainstream, right? It would have been like, oh, Isaac's an asshole, but let's bring him in for this, like no big deal, blah blah blah. That's how it was when I worked at the DA in New York. That was my first real job out of college. That's how it was because it was, this was 2007. It was still completely male dominated. It was, it was like a kind of a good old boys club. And everybody was like, Isaac, don't listen, don't worry about him. It was all fun. Everybody loved, we loved each other. It was all like fun, love. I ultimately would have gone and done my own thing anyway, right? But it would have been much less toxic and scary and fucked up. Whereas when I actually started getting fired from stuff, it was always by HR and it was always for creepy political reasons, people like tracking what I was doing. I remember I worked at 72 and Sunny, this great advertising firm. And I started getting into it with one of my bosses who was a woman, and she set up a mirror on her desk. Our desks were like back to back, right? So it's like my back was to her back in like a big bullpen. And one day I noticed that she brought a mirror in, and she put the mirror right on her desk so she could see into the mirror onto my screen. So she could like see what I was typing. And I looked back and she kept like adjusting the mirror and shit. And I was like, what the fuck? But when you're a young guy, at least until now, when now like there's people like us who write about this stuff and talk about it openly, so people have like the concept of what's going on. Back then, you didn't know. It wasn't super clear. It wasn't like obvious. I am now being discriminated against. That wasn't like obviously what was happening. Now I know it was,
Right.
but it wasn't like, oh yeah, you're a white straight guy. You can't fucking say these things. You're not allowed to. You can't like have an opinion. If you're at the bottom of the food chain. So, again, I was gonna end up here no matter what. This was always what was gonna happen, and so, but it was a lot more torment and pain and starting from scratch and total alienation. I mean, total alienation. You know what I mean? Like, I would have still had a lot of connections in the mainstream. Like, dude, it's amazing that I even have a business at all. I don't have any connections to any of my old agencies besides good friends I made at those places. But I have no official, after I came out shamelessly for Trump in 2020, I think that was 2020, I lost all that. It was, I used to get every day, I used to wake up to, not every day, but I used to wake up to opportunities that would come from the mainstream. They would be like, oh, we saw your portfolio. Do you want to go work for some big, want to freelance for a few months for us? Those after 2020, like literally zero, like a faucet off. I don't know how that happened. I'm probably on some lists, but I don't know how that fucking happened because I had a good portfolio. I had a really good portfolio. I got all jobs my whole life from my portfolio, and then suddenly gone. Like, the great agency I worked for, I wish I had a good relationship with them, but it's like, it's like awkward. Like I'm the, like he went, he went to the dark side. Like we can't speak to him anymore. Like that's because he went over there.
The long arm of the longhouse strikes again.
Yeah, dude. I don't know if you experienced that. I mean, what about you? Like when you got fired, was it a really huge blow or how did you deal with it?
Oh yeah, it was really hard because I had, I was probably like 29 at the time running a national magazine as the executive editor. I'd done a bunch of stuff that had, exploded sales, and we had like Scarlett Johansson on the cover and interviewing her and like doing all this, taking an interesting direction. And I was working 70 to 90 hours a week on it. It was like my life.
Did you meet Scarlett? Did you meet Scarlett Johansson?
Just over the phone. So it was really hard at the time. It was I really kind of struggled with it, and ended up running like some food magazine for a while, and then started a content creation business before I ended up going to work with these guys. But yeah, it's really, I think it was incredibly radicalizing too, because I guess I just extremely naively assumed, well, it's not that big a deal. Like, what, you know,
Right.
you vote for this person, I vote for this person. Like, you know, we could talk about it over drinks. Like, who, like, at the end of the day, who really cares? And obviously that was very stupid to think,
So
but that
why
was
do
kind
you
of my,
think that happened? Why do you think this happened in America? Because you're right. We all, you and I, it's actually remarkable how similar we are. It's, we both went into this thinking, yeah, okay, whatever. What does it really mean? In 2016, you know, who cares who we vote for? So how did it happen? How do you think that this happened?
there's probably a lot of different answers and reasons. I think one thing that pops to my head when you ask that question, though, is the internet has created such a monoculture across the country and the world also, but where everyone feels the need to have the exact same beliefs, to be in this in group. That, I mean, that's kind of a common human characteristic. But that would, you know, you would have, you know, regional identities, or state or city or community or church or synagogue, whatever. And all of those institutions have kind of been destroyed. So there's basically just like sports and politics are people's religions now almost, and that's their central identity. I think that, I'm sure that's not the only reason, but I think that is a factor at play that then makes it such higher stakes of like, can you believe this guy is part of the out group, an enemy, that he doesn't, you know, believe, you know, with the doctrinaire opinions, that it's really like dangerous and off-putting on like a spiritual level almost, I think, for the left to encounter people that don't agree with them. Which, yeah, it's kind of mind blowing, because I mean, I, you know, I don't know, it's, but even now, you still, and you know, in when Trump ran in 2024, there's a whole cadre of intellectuals who still cannot wrap their heads around that there are people that might vote for Trump. And it's just, it's kind of mind boggling when you think of it, because it's like, I could think of a million reasons why someone voted for Kamala Harris or is a Democrat or whatever. Like, and the, you know, the fact that you can't, you know, put your mind in like a steel worker in the Midwest who might have differing opinions about globalization or all these other issues, you know, it's a failure of the intellectual class and a failure of the elites to recognize the world around them. But what do you think?
Why do I think it happened?
Yeah.
I mean, I think, as I've said, I think it was a demographic thing. I think we did feminism for 50 years, and we reached a point where, particularly in the media, the not just because it's women, but because we did DEI for 50 years, right? We did this experiment in civil rights. And by the time we got to 2015, by the time we got to basically 2010, it was the absolute perfect storm. Like we'd filled the ranks with these incompetent manager type people who really didn't belong there. But they were very overeducated. They were told their whole lives that they're, you know, very special and that they deserve these fancy jobs. And the boomers were too stupid to understand what was going on. They just pulled the ladders, right? So the talent mechanism basically broke down, but it was invisible. You couldn't really see it because, and it's not until now that people like my friend Jacob Savage, did you see the pieces he's been writing, like on, there hasn't been a white guy born after 1983 published in the New Yorker as a fiction writer ever. So basically that, you know, he wrote a whole article on this. Basically that happened, but you didn't notice it right away. Like you didn't see, it wasn't super obvious that the ranks had been filled with people who weren't there because of their merit. They were there because they went to, you know, they were a woman basically who went to the right schools. I mean, no offense, or a black person or a Latinx, whatever you want to call it. And that just led to a situation where the regime needed to pivot, right? The regime itself was relying on its managers to pivot it. That's how that goes. But it couldn't pivot because the people that it had put in place in these managerial roles were too sclerotic. This is what we refer to as HR. This is HR. Like that's the managerial level. That had become too sclerotic and too incapable of imagining change to shift. So basically, culture split in half, and you had that whole layer of the people who basically run culture defected from what they were supposed to be doing, and then instead they tried to force. They tried to force culture to go to a place that it didn't want to go because, as we all saw, the Rust Belt was destroyed, right? Like there was such a trauma. The nation had undergone such an insane trauma, which was the total gutting of the manufacturing class to the point where the Midwest looks like a bomb zone. That was gonna get paid back. That was always gonna. That was something was gonna happen with that. It wasn't just gonna sit there and everybody was just gonna forget about it. So, what Trump represented was that group fighting back, and instead of being able to tangle with that, the managerial class closed ranks and basically treated Trump like they treated you and me, and said, "No, fuck you, get out." Like you're not getting in here. They're going, no. We're not going to listen, and that obviously didn't work. It was luckily America's still democratic and meritocratic, whatever you want to call it, enough that the shift was still able to occur, and that's pretty much. It was just delayed by about a decade, I think, 15 years or so.
I really don't, I'm curious about your thoughts. I don't know if I have a definite opinion. I mean, do you think that the vitriol they went after Mitt Romney or something, that is tangentially, is that related to that? Or is in some ways Bush and those people just kind of an outgrowth of the left or the managerial class? Really?
Yeah,
and then the vitriol was coming because, and to a certain extent, Bernie experienced this as well.
Yeah,
because it's an existential threat
exactly
to their establishment.
And that's when I knew they were lost beyond help. When they sidelined Bernie to that degree, and even Elizabeth Warren. I always said, I mean, I now don't like her, but I always said Warren would have been a great candidate. They should have made it Warren. She could have reconciled some of these things. Because if they'd made it Warren, that would have at least been a bone to the working common white guy. That would have at least been some kind of acknowledgement that there had been a fuck up. But the fact that they completely pushed them aside, that told me they're not going to survive this. But yeah, in terms of who are Bush, so the Yarvin example, the example that anybody uses these days is that they're the outer party. They're the hecklers vote. We've talked about this. They're the hecklers vote. They're not real opposition. They're sort of fake opposition. I don't know if I totally buy that. I don't think it's like all a theater and it's a complete BS. But I do think that, yes, the regime is basically one thing. And I think it can shift and it can pivot. But again, I think a lot of people would say that a lot of people say Trump was the only true outsider. And that's why the regime had a complete panic attack, because it was like he wasn't a Bush, he wasn't a Romney, he wasn't actually of the regime. He really was a class defector. I actually don't think that's true. I think it was his attitude, and I think, again, it was by that point, his attitude was unacceptable inside the sclerotic range of behavior that was allowed. And I think that that's really more what it was than the fact that he's a true outsider and Romney's not. And, of course, there's something to that, but I'm not a pure believer in that.
Well, and you saw, George Will was writing essays defending Trump at the very beginning of like, oh, maybe we can
Yep.
work with him, or like, and then I forget what exactly he said or did that then permanently got him as the outsider status. But
Well, what happened with George Will?
well, in the very beginning with Trump, George Will was writing essays defending him, saying like, oh, because I think they still thought maybe they could control him,
Yeah.
or they could, channel this energy in a certain way. And there a lot of these, what would you even call them? I don't, they're certainly not conservatives, cheerleaders for the establishment on the right.
Yeah.
Yeah, the hecklers vote. But I remember that they were at the very, very beginning writing articles defending him a little bit, and then there was some sort of switch that then.
Yes. I remember that too. I remember there was that little phase in the beginning where, see, this is exactly proof of what we're saying. There was a minute there where the edgier parts of the establishment were gonna say, all right, let's maybe shift. Like, like let's give this guy a shot. Like if he's really winning, let's try to see what he has to say. Obviously he's resonating for some reason. Maybe these claims he's making about American manufacturing and shit like that and borders, maybe this is going to be a problem. But those people, I saw it happen, man. I was in LA. I saw it happen firsthand. Those experimenter, whatever you want to call it, like not mavens, like early adopter type people in the establishment were like shut down, and they all behaved. They were all like, okay. They all like relented because they were being crushed by HR. They were internally, HR was like, no, George Will, you are not, fuck you. You can't say that. This is Hitler. You're supporting Hitler. So they completely closed ranks. But I do remember there was that little period where I had a friend here, man. One of my best friends from law school moved here to LA with me, or not with me, but after me. And he worked at big, I won't say where, but he worked at all the right places, all the big agencies, and black guy. And in the very beginning, he wore a MAGA hat. And he used to wear a MAGA hat around, and he would be like, "Yeah, I'm a radical. I'm totally for Trump." But he was completely down for Trump. And then something happened. He actually told me like something happened at a party. He said like a bunch of gay dudes got like really pissed at him at a party, and he completely switched. He like literally it was like night and day. Like one day he was like MAGA, like I'm cool. I'm like rebellious, blah blah. And then it was like the next week he was like, Trump's a racist, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, what happened, man? Like something happened. Like all those people, they just gotten in some way.
HR made the call.
Yeah, they got the call. And I was like, what happened, bro? Like 5 seconds ago, we were on the same team. And then now I'm a racist because I like Trump. It was like, what the fuck? It was really weird.
Has there been anything worse than the effect of HR across
No, dude. HR is the
creation?
worst thing in the world.
And I saw this on Twitter. I feel bad I don't remember the person who was saying it, but it was basically saying like it would be literally impossible to create any of the inventions or products that like the refrigerator, the airplane, all of these transistors that we use because they were dangerous when they were created. And
right.
like HR and like safety committees would be like, no, we can't use these products. They could kill somebody.
Yeah. Or like, how about like intimacy coordinators in movies? It's like none of these things could have ever happened. Like we would have gotten nowhere because it's like,
and there's literally no sex in movies anymore. There's nothing. It's
weird. It feels weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it feels like this like really fake thing. So my question for you is, are you and I, people like us, are we stuck on the right? Or can we so now that we've, burned the ships and we've gone Trump and blah, blah, blah. Let's say the right now gets really annoying and like goes back to being kind of neocon-y, which you can sort of see that happening. Are we now tainted forever, or can we go back to like being Bernie Bros if we wanted? I'm not saying I'm going to do this. I'm just
I don't
saying
know.
it's like good.
It's a good question. I think there's something deep to it too. I mean, I personally think that like in 20 years, politics is going to be, it's going to look nothing like it does right now. There's going to be some radical changes as, especially the generation under us, Isaac, as the Zoomers gain more preeminence in things. I don't see politics reverting back to the 90s, and it's possible, anything's possible, but I really do think that ship has sailed. And then, I mean, it's actually kind of interesting going back to what we were talking about a few minutes ago of like, well, it would make sense for the left to go hyper populist, socialist to try and gain, votes and give things away. But then that in and of itself is also a threat to the regime and would probably get the same Thermidorian reaction. So it'll be interesting to how that kind of plays out across different strains of left-wing politics and age groups. But no, I don't think it's going to revert back to neoconservatism.
So what do you think's going to happen? Like when you say in 20 years, what do you mean? What's going to happen?
I mean, I don't have a crystal ball. I think that, people, the secret's out. It's not a democracy. It's an oligarchy. It's a professional managerial class that manages things. It's a giant bureaucracy that can't be voted out or voted on, that, consistently take the opposite opinion of the people's will, so to speak. Pick any issue from immigration to trans kids, and you see that they're not in line with the majority, the average person. And I think that's so out there and in the discourse that I think that that's going to get harder to hide and harder to maintain that illusion. And, that as people become more and more disillusioned with democracy and realizing that their voice really doesn't matter in many ways, not completely, but in many ways, unfortunately, I think that probably results in more radicalism on both sides.
Okay. So where does that lead us? Like, where are we going to go?
I mean, it's hard. I'm not a prognosticator. I don't know. I mean, a new FDR type figure, maybe something like that.
Interesting. New FDR. Well, the economy is going to have to collapse at some point, because it's been just going for so long. It can't just go up forever.
Everyone says that, but then I don't know. It keeps going. It's just doom and gloom, and I'm trying as much as I can to not care about things that are completely outside my purview, but also that are going to take place 50 years from now. Sure. I wrote about it in that Japan piece briefly that I wrote of, that everyone's scared to death of societal collapse, of people aren't having enough babies. And it's I don't know. You're telling me in 50 years I need to be worried that everyone's going to die? Okay, sure.
Right.
That if there's 100 million Japanese instead of 125 million, that means it's the end of Japan. Okay, maybe. It's just shit that I'm not going to worry about.
It's how about we deal with that problem when we get there?
Yeah.
That's I just saw a thing on Instagram that was really effective people spend most of their time thinking about what they need to do in the next 18 hours and spending basically zero time thinking what they need to do after that.
Yeah.
Apparently Elon Musk and Steve Jobs just think about the next 18 hours. That's it. And they're just totally locked into that. Yeah, that's kind of how I feel as humanity. It's all right.
It's an outgrowth when you don't have a ton of power, I think, is to get really caught up in, global warming. And I'm really concerned about these just very abstract things. And it's like, well, you probably could like be concerned about something that's happening in your community and like do your volunteer time to, help that. But
Right.
that that would require going outside the house or something. But
Well, yeah, it is weird. It's like, yeah, why are people addicted to this, like abstract? Yeah, this abstract helping. I think it's because it's easy. It's like you don't
Mhm.
actually have to actually help anybody. You just have to have the intention to help somebody. And so therefore, it's like, oh, well, I have good intentions, and I'm signaling my good intentions. I've done what I need to do, and that's it. I don't need to like do anything else, kind of.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's become kind of a trite cliche at this point of like, left wing has morphed into a religion. But there definitely are aspects of it, of this like moral purity of like, oh, I'm doing something that echoes my moral goodness to everyone around me. Like, are you actually doing anything? Probably not. But the whole point is like making absolution, or or buying indulgences, I suppose, through George Floyd.
Did Floyd indulgences. All right. So what's give me some hits from the magazine. What have you liked publishing so far in Frontier?
Um, that's a good question. I think some of my we had a piece from this writer Mike Mercury about his travels through Syria, where he did this Gonzo piece of
Oh
journalism where
yeah,
he's just kind of like wandering around and embedding with ISIS during the fall of
yeah.
Assad in Syria, which is just a great like old school form of journalism that you don't find as much anymore because that people aren't doing. I felt pretty proud about publishing that, going out there. Um, you know, President, I have to give kudos to your Phoenix piece, was pretty great about where MAGA is heading, and what happens when the dog catches the car and people actually have power. Does anything change in culture when the hula? I'm probably paraphrasing too much of what
The
that was,
American
but
kulak that became a thing
yeah,
afterwards.
yeah.
It was so funny because that's like when you're a writer and you have some total throwaway thing that you just and then that
Mhm.
becomes the thing everybody wants to talk to you about. That was totally American kulak. Yeah, I worked so hard on that piece, man. That was like I really was like giving it my all on that one. And it's funny because it's like, yeah, it was that one little. I should have just focused all on American kulaks because that's what people really, wanted to talk about. But
You
yeah,
should
that
have
was
had
a
a
good
better
one.
you should have had a better editor that noticed that. But
uh, so
no, that was a fun piece to work on. I thought there was a
Well,
lot of
wait, yeah. So
interesting.
hold on. This Mike, I know Mike Mercury well,
Yeah.
and we all know who he is. And I've read this piece, and it is so good. It's really so good. This is the one in here that has the piece about like the image I remember from this. It's called Syria's Bloody Crescent.
Hmm.
And this one, I think, has the images of like the religious women walking past the prostitutes, and they're like right next to each other, which is like, I didn't know that happened. It's like we think of it as like everybody's in a burqa, but it's actually like, no, like some women are in burqas and then some are prostitutes, like right next to each other. Is that,
Yeah.
I feel like, was that in here?
Um, I think I may not have included that image
Oh,
actually,
sorry.
unfortunately. But he sent that over, but that was a great image.
No,
But
no,
yeah,
not
no, it
not
was.
the actual picture. I mean, he was writing. I know I
The
didn't.
right,
There
the
was
right.
no
No, yeah,
actual pictures. There was no
oh,
actual
okay,
pictures.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
The writing, yeah, no, that anecdote is in there. It's fascinating.
yeah, 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 yeah.
But we got Charlie LaDuff to write about being
Oh,
a
nice.
Pulitzer Prize winning reporter journalist who gets a job at a hot dog stand to get the insurance, and then he ends up meeting all these like interesting cops and prostitutes and people of the city. But
Really?
he's an incredible writer.
So Charlie Duff worked at a hot dog stand?
He still does, I think,
Really?
because they gave him like insurance, and he realized like when he quit the New York Times, that he needed to get some insurance for for his family. So, um, but yeah, it's a great. a great piece of Americana.
So does each issue have a theme? This one has boats on it.
No, we don't. Excuse me. We don't. Each issue doesn't have a theme. We wanted to go with something that was evoked summer and outdoors. Um, And then we also realized that we probably couldn't put a masked jihadi on the cover. That might not be the right vibes for it. Mike did have some cool images of that. Yeah, it was. We really don't have a theme. It's more we have sections where, there's kind of lighter stuff up front. There's kind of hard hitting journalism, photo essays. We have a kind of Maha faith and family section of like this issue just has there's like an article about like the best off the beaten path national parks that you can take your family. So there's stuff
Oh,
like
cool.
that. So and then we're doing each issue, at least for a while, like a small section about a state. So this one was about Michigan. And we had some great Michigan writers like O.W. Root and Charlie LaDuff, and Blaze's own Dave Landau writing a tongue-in-cheek defense of Kwame Kilpatrick.
Oh, I see. Okay, so there is like a state, a part sort of vaguely about a state.
Yeah, we did like a Michigan one. This one we're gonna do Tennessee next issue.
Oh, cool. All right. Very nice. So there's a state focus. That's cool.
Yeah, just in a small section. But yeah, so there really isn't each issue has a theme. It's more just kind of sections that we hit and cover and go about it that way.
So you had a great piece, I think in the first one about Chris Rufo.
Thank you.
So yeah, that was a really good one, man. And this is again like why this is so needed. It's like Chris Rufo, for some reason, like has not been profiled really. At least, well, at least in anywhere that I've seen, and at least like fairly. So yours was like a fair profile of Rufo. So what did you learn about Rufo? How did you write that?
Well, I mean, part of this too gets back a little bit of why I think magazines are great, and when you have an opportunity like this of like go out and spend an entire day with Chris Rufo, I think it's
Yeah.
so much more beneficial than if you were writing some short article for the internet and maybe he sends you some email answers or you talk on the phone for an hour.
Yeah.
Spending the day with him in his office, going to his favorite bar for lunch, seeing where he lives, you really get a whole different kind of sense of the man and who he is. And I mean, Rufo's a fascinating character. I think he's interesting. If he came out, he was a documentary filmmaker. Some of his documentaries are actually like excellent. And then that kind of led him to his political awakening, that lined up more populist and has led into his journalism. And I mean, it was interesting though, his team is, oh, I'm sorry.
What?
Oh, sorry about that. It's a very like bare bones small team that he created. He's able to do all this like journalism and do all these things from. It's not that I was anticipating it was like this big operation. But it's really just kind of Rufo the man who goes after things that he thinks are interesting or worthwhile or worth uncovering and worth pursuing. But it was a fun article to write.
And so what was the genesis? Because he was kind of like a Bourdainish type guy,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
that was kind of seemed like what he was going for. And he was kind of Bourdainish, and then he had this flip. So why did he flip? Do we remember? Do you remember?
The story that he told me was he did this. I've seen it, and I feel bad. I'm spacing on the name of it, but it was a documentary about these 4 cities in America that have just gotten their hearts wrenched out, and everything's been offshore. And it was like Oakland, California, Youngstown, Ohio, 2 other places, maybe somewhere in Tennessee, and So it was like a really long. It took it was years in the making. He made it for PBS, where he went out and he saw this economic and moral degradation, and the end effects of what happens in communities when you take away all their jobs and ability to provide for their families. And at the end of it, it wasn't a appeal for more government funding or after school programs. It was basically that people have to um find a moral center and find religion or something in their life. And I forget, I don't think I asked him this, but I got the sense that it really radicalized him too, in terms of populism and what had happened to these communities across the country.
I see. So he also, right. He had like seen it and then he tried to, right. He like tried to highlight it or something and then realized that he was like getting shut down and he was like, screw this, right? Yeah, something like
Yeah,
that.
and I mean, he said like he basically had a political transformation in the middle of filming it. That he realized that he wanted to do something else that more aligned with his politics and beliefs.
So, and then what makes him such an effective organizer? Because he's really not an artist. He's an organizer, right? I mean, or whatever you call it, whatever that is.
I mean, I think
Uh,
he's an artist in a way. At least he was at the beginning of his career. I think
sure,
he brings some of
right.
that like flair
Yeah, I think
into his stuff.
that was the biggest. That was why these profiles are so great. Like seeing that and um, like understanding that he was an artist. That was what he wanted to do. Like that made
Hmm.
me understand Chris Rufo so much more. Because I was like, oh, okay. Now I like get this guy. Like now I can like see what's driving him. But what makes him so effective? Like how did he get so good at what he does?
I think he's an extremely effective communicator. I think his book, and I think I said that in the article, it's not particularly original. Like people have written that book before. I think of like the long march to the institutions, of how the left captured the academic institutions and the downstream effects of that. I mean, people have been writing about that for a while. I think that it came out in a real like moment where people were really noticing that, and he was extremely effective at explaining that in the book, of like the genesis, talking about postmodern critical theories in a way that anyone could understand, and like then the effect that it has on why their kids are coming back with
Yeah, well, it's
these.
the march. It's the
Yeah,
march through the institutions, right?
yeah. But then
The
I
book
think
was okay. It was,
yeah,
but let's be honest, not a great book. It really, if you want to do that same book, you got to read the best of the best political whining book I've ever read is Age of Entitlement, and that's really it's the same thing. It's basically the same book, except he really goes much deeper
yeah,
into the educational and the all the weather underground and blah blah blah. But
right.
it's sort of shockingly academic. It's even more academic than Age of Entitlement, Rufo's book. But yeah,
Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe that's why that didn't resonate as much as the one
yeah,
that's less
yeah,
academic and
right. Sure.
allows. But I think the point I'm trying to make is that I think that he found kind of a soft underbelly that could be attacked and exploited by showcasing the out of control DEI policies. And I mean, it was interesting I'm pretty sure it's in the article. I mean, he told me that it was like, it wasn't some, when the Claudine Gay thing went supernova and became, it was super viral. This wasn't like some grand strategy that he was like, 4D chessing. It was basically he was shooting a lot of shots at a lot of different things and trying to find targets. And for whatever reason, that one just hit. And then that was able to
Oh,
kind of
that's interesting. Okay, so
catapult him.
that's an interesting fact.
Hmm.
I didn't
Yeah,
realize that.
I had assumed like he had some like grand
Yeah.
strategy to make it go, but I mean, he said he was he was kind of taking shots at similar people that were doing similar things, and for whatever reason, that one just hit.
Yeah. Yeah, these people are so interesting, man. These like activists. You know, for our thing, I interviewed very briefly Charlie Kirk, and I wish
Hmm.
I'd gotten a longer and better interview with him. I had about 15 minutes because it was at AmFest, and he was obviously, you know, he is like the king of AmFest. So you're not going to get time with Charlie there, but he's such a different guy, Charlie, than he seems. You know, he comes off as this wonky, you know, kind of wonky, nerdy, super passionate politics wonk guy,
Hmm.
but in real life, he's like a total Chad. Like he's like tall,
Right.
he's very handsome, he's very smooth, he's very like, you know, cool and charismatic. He rolls around with this like group of like other super tall, handsome guys that are like his like guys. And it's so funny because it's like he's so not what I think a lot of people see him as, which is this like, you know, really wonky like policy nerd. Like he's that he didn't strike me like that at all.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I mean, it's interesting what his, I mean, what his target audience is, and who. I mean, I guess it's Gen Z, but then I think Turning Point also appeals to older people. I don't know. He's able to capture a wide variety of like segments and demographics.
Yeah. So
Um,
who else? Who
I'm
else has been profiled in there? That's good. Anybody come to mind?
um let's see. There's definitely been Elena Velez, this issue, the fashion designer. James wrote a great
Oh, that
profile
was
for.
Poulos. Poulos wrote that.
Yeah, yeah.
Nice. How was that?
It was good. Turned out great. She definitely had some. He went out to New York and met with her, took some cool pictures of her design studio, and yeah, it's. I mean, I think she's emblematic of there is a whole shift, and in some ways, I think people get a little too caught up of like, oh, everyone's going like right wing or whatever, but it is. I don't necessarily think it's exactly that, but it's more. There's a cultural shift and a cultural revulsion towards, I guess, boomer politics, for lack of a better word, of like the reality that's been how we grew up in our lives, and how that manifests is kind of interesting, and the different characters and people that are in it, you know, right wing people, left wing people, all kinds of
Yeah.
people.
Well, when we're talking about right wing culture, we really are talking about this anti woke thing. I mean, you know, that everybody
Yeah.
flipped out, yeah, about John's piece about our little scene here, and because he called it anti woke, but actually, the further I get away from that piece, the more I realize that John was entirely correct to call it anti woke. Like it is anti woke. He's right. That is like what it is, and so I think so many figures like Rufo, like Velez, you know,
Hmm.
Charlie Kirk is much more of a traditional political guy, but Velez, Rufo, these are truly like anti woke people, which is like it's just such a unique phenomenon. Like we're never gonna get that again.
Is
That's
that
gonna be a one
enough?
time thing.
Is that enough to build like
A
a culture or
permanent.
cultural movement? I don't. I mean, you get in. Obviously, you discuss this in your article.
Yeah.
But it is an interesting question that I don't know of like, is it just in antithesis of something else? Like, is that enough to build something cultural and something meaningful? Does it have to be deeper than that? I don't know. Because I mean, you're right though, is
That's a
because
good
it is kind
question.
of like a kulak culture in some ways on the right that you see. Like there
Well, but
isn't like high cult or
cool. Yeah, Kulak is anti woke naturally, though, right? I mean
right.
that's kind of the point. It's like Americans are naturally anti woke. They don't
Hmm.
like. They actually don't like being racist. They really don't. Like Americans actually don't like it. They don't like
Hmm.
being racist against black people, and they don't like being racist against white people. It makes Americans very uncomfortable, and it always has. British people are also like that. You know,
Yeah.
the British people are inherently, it makes them very uncomfortable. Nativism and racial purity. It's just something that turns off the Anglo sphere of people. They don't like it. And that's always been the case. And that's why it's like, Yarvin, et cetera, says it's the Boston Brahmins or the real, Jews. It's because like, he's right. Like those people, like racism is just abhorrent naturally to Americans. We just don't, it's not like part of kind of like who we are. And so that's why it becomes this fetish. Like many things, like sex also, Americans, we have this puritanical DNA. And it makes us really weird about certain shit. And so race has become this really like stigmatized fetish that we're constantly tangling with. And yeah, basically white people got addicted to it. I mean, like white women in particularly got really addicted to obsessing about race and to trying to signal that they were not racist. But in doing so, of course, they went the other way, which was to be racist the other direction. And then everybody said, no, 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 we don't want to do that either. We don't want to be racist either. We don't, Americans just don't like it. And so, no, being anti-woke is not enough. Then this is what I'm constantly saying. There has to be another message here. It has to be more than just, we're not racist, It has to be, here's what we actually stand for, and I think that that's what's going to be coming up probably. I mean, I don't know, where do you see things going culturally? Do you think, here's a good question. Do you think woke is over?
Um, yeah, kind of. I don't know. I mean, it depends. To me, also like these terms are so nebulous and like shift so much in the cultural milieu of like what they even mean, of like woke right and woke left and like all these like. I think that the Robin, if you're kind of thinking of woke, of like the Robin DiAngelo, like cringe inducing HR lady, I think that is leaving. I think there's a lot, there's still a lot of cultural power left in that, but it just doesn't seem to have,
Yeah.
People just don't care about it, and also intrinsically find it. I think Yarvin had this line in one of his books of like, are you going to adopt the politics of your 55-year-old wine aunt? Like at some point, like people are going to be like, yeah, I don't know. It's just intrinsically uncool. So yeah, if you're defining woke as kind of that apex that we lived through and suffered under in our careers in the mainstream, I do think that is kind of on the outs. But let me see. I do think, well, I think that unfortunately radical socialism and those type of things will probably be more on the ascendancy.
Okay, so yeah, so say more about that. Where do you think, what is woke gonna evolve into?
Well, I mean, if we're thinking of woke as like the left, I think, is it, how do you pronounce that guy's name in New York? Is it Mamdani?
Mamdani, yes.
Mamdani. I think that these voting blocks of immigrants that have come in that don't have the same necessarily adherence and cultural history tied to some of the institutions that we have, and they're going to run on giving away things and giving free things away, which always does pretty well in a democracy. I think you're going to see a lot more of that and a lot more radical direction heading that way. But and that's what I'm saying is on the like hard edge of the left. But again, I don't think that most people are really that extreme in America. I mean, maybe the trends are heading a little bit that, but it's like what you were saying. Like most people are like intrinsically not racist. They just want to grill. They don't want to get involved in these cultural machinations over abstract political ideals. But yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't really know where it's going. I wish I did, but
Yeah. Yeah. Well. Um, okay, cool, man. Well, so how do people get the magazine? This is the biggest complaint I get. They don't know how to get the magazine. So how do they get it?
Yeah, it's a little difficult. You can go to blaze.com and uh let me see. I should actually know the sorry, I don't know the URL off the top of my head. Sorry.
It's okay.
Theblaze.com/frontier. You can subscribe there and get the magazine. We got some great stuff coming out for issue 4. We're
Wait, can
really
you
excited.
just do just the magazine now or no?
It's the Blaze Unlimited subscription.
Yeah, so you got to get the Blaze. So yeah, let's just say what it is. You got to get
Yeah.
the Blaze Unlimited subscription,
Yes.
right?
And you get access to Frontier Magazine.
Wait, Blaze, what is Blaze, theblaze.com? Blaze. All right, all right.
Theblaze.com/.
Yeah, so it's like there's other stuff that you're getting when you do this, right? That's kind of the thing.
Yeah. Some
Yeah, I think.
in Blaze TV and in IRL events and things like that.
Got it. Okay, right. Very cool.
But
Very cool.
yeah, we got some good stories coming out in the next issue. I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, what kind of stuff? Tell us what you got.
We're trying to I don't know how much I can say, but trying to work with Mike Mercury to send him to some other extremely dangerous foreign locale for another one of those stories. So we're gonna see we're gonna see how that goes. Um, when he made the pitch, I was like, I'm really concerned you might actually die doing that. He's like, no, it's fine, man. Don't worry about it.
Well, that's his whole thing. He wants to be. There's a certain type of guy who wants to just be in the war zone as a reporter. You know, that's like a certain type.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, we got
yeah.
hopefully Charlie LaDuff is going to write for us again. We're excited about that. Something longer form, kind of utilize his talents. Incredible writer. Actually, John McDermott is writing about the Grateful Dead for us.
Oh, the Grateful Dead. What's gonna be? What
Yeah.
about the Grateful Dead? What about the Grateful Dead?
He had like a great pitch about he went and saw their last show in San Francisco this weekend, and
Oh,
I don't want to give away too much, but he's had this relationship with his father, and then seeing the Dead, and then kind of this quintessential American band that's like hippie, but then also very crass capitalist at the same time, and that dichotomy. It was interesting how he
wait, the
how he
Grateful Dead are crass capitalists?
oh yeah, you didn't know.
Why? Well, how are they crass capitalists?
I mean, they're like every single way they can monetize their fan base. They've been very into that over the
Oh,
years.
I see. Right. Well,
You know,
there's that great lyric from Don Henley's Boys of Summer where he goes, "Saw a deadhead sticker on a Cadillac. We can't go back. We can never go back." And that's one of my favorite like anti-boomer lines of all time because he's saying like they sold out. You know, it's like we sold
yeah,
out, and I guess that is true of the Dead. Um,
yeah.
yeah.
It always reminds me of the no one's more like working class than Bruce Springsteen. And
Yeah.
he's also one of these people that tries to retch every dollar. And then I saw that he bought $120 million house in LA
Oh
at one
my
point. I
God.
was like, wow, that a true man of the people.
Well,
So
in a way, though,
I might get hate if there's Springsteen fans in your
I mean, if
audience.
we're talking about being
People,
a, sorry, go ahead.
no.
No, if we're talking about being an American kulak, um, that is the most American thing. You know what I mean? Because, or sorry, that is the most kulak thing because it's like your new money, right? It's like you're
Hmm.
being new money. Trump is so new money in his vibes. That's why he really appeals to kulaks because it's like they're like, oh well, that's what I would have a gold ceiling also if I, like it's very new money.
No, he's
Uh,
like the
yeah.
idea of what a millionaire would be in the
Right,
eyes of someone who
exactly. It's
wasn't a
like,
million. Like,
yeah,
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 you'd make your toilet made out of
gold,
gold. Like,
right?
why
Yeah,
wouldn't you?
exactly. Why wouldn't you?
Like,
Yeah,
that's what
yeah,
I would do.
yeah, exactly. And so that's why he is actually very appealing to that group. Um, Anyway, all right, man. Well, we will send everybody to the place to find you. Anything else you want to say or shill before we get out of here?
No, subscribe to Frontier. We'll have to get you. I'll have to entice you to write something great for Frontier again at some point. You have
Yeah,
to come
no,
up with
I'm down,
I know
man.
I know you're busy, man, but
I'm down. Well, yeah, I have been
um,
very, very busy recently, but um, yeah,
what a,
God, I haven't written
that
anything in so
that
long.
El Segundo piece was so great too.
Well, that one was a
Of
better
like,
Yeah, that was good.
are they actually controlling the weather now? That was. Did you see
I
that
know,
whole
isn't that
dust?
funny?
That whole does. Yeah,
Well, because Augustus was such a big
yeah.
part of that piece, but he's also just like the star. So of course he's yeah, and now he's in trouble. I don't know what's going to happen to him. We'll see what happens with his weather controlling program.
Well, it's fine. Yeah, it
What?
is that. It's interesting. Is like that is one of those like Alex Jones things where it's like that sounded so insane like 12 years ago, and now they're like, yeah, no, we kind of can control the weather, but
Well,
it's so
yeah,
limited though. It's like that's what
exactly.
I found like silly when people are like, that company caused, or these companies caused those floods. It's like, no, it's not. Doesn't seem possible, but
Yeah, I mean, God, it seems like a very unlucky thing that would happen, but yeah, who knows? I don't know the details, so I can't weigh in. All right, man, dude, thanks so much for joining. I will
thank you so
talk to
much,
you
Isaac.
for sure anytime, man. I'll talk to you soon.
Appreciate it.
Peace.
Stay away.